patient is a 10-year-old. Now, in this instance, the age did not matter, but keep in mind that the age is always an important factor because the age determines our code sometimes. So we want to pay attention to the age. This patient is actually coming in for an EEG. So she has a history of refractory seizure disorder, now in almost a continual seizing state. So once again, what I've done is in these two documents today, I broke down and this is what I want you to do in your homework when you're looking at these reports. What is refractory seizure disorder? Okay, it simply means that the medicine's not bringing the seizures under control. So you need to know that. All right, then the description of the procedure. This patient had a digital electroencephalogram recorded using the 10 to 20 electrode placement system. The recording was performed following sleep deprivation. During the recording, the patient was both awake and asleep. And those are things I would be making note of, mental or on my piece of paper. And then I've even given the definition of a digital EEG. It's a test and it measures electrical activity in our brain using small electrodes, which are attached to our scalp. Our brain cells communicate via these electrical impulses, and they're active all the time, even during the sleep pattern. The activity shows up as a wavy line on the EEG reading. This patient had a digital EEG. This is actually just a paperless recording where they capture everything onto the computer, and then the physician can actually view the results, the test itself, on any computer instead of a piece of paper, a strip of paper printing out. The physician can now look at it on a computer. Then we see that during the EEG hookup, the patient began having a seizure. When the recording started, well into the seizure, there was spikes, which means the waves were elevated. The patient was given diastat, which stops the seizure. We can see postictically there was diffusely increased beta range activity and intermittent vertex waves. Just means that there was a lot of activity going on that graph. It's a graph, and it's like an EKG if you've seen that before. It's where the lines are going up and down. Okay, when the patient fell asleep and there was activity with when the patient fell asleep, there was activity with overlying beta activity. Another seizure was anticipated and the procedure was stopped. What I want you to see here is it was stopped. It wasn't discontinued. If it had been discontinued, then the physician would have documented that. So we cannot assume that the procedure was stopped prematurely, because these procedures may not last but 15 minutes. They're not long. They're very, most of the time, short. They can go up to probably 40, 45 minutes, but we cannot assume here that the procedure was stopped. Was discontinued. All right, so we have a diagnosis here. It's an abnormal EEG with a generalized idiopathic epileptic seizure with status epilepticus. All right, and this right here, this refractory seizure disorder, remember, that's just telling us that the medication that the patient had been on was not successfully treating the seizure. But when we see the word abnormal EEG, we don't have to assign a code for that because we have a definitive diagnosis. Now, if all the physician had documented was abnormal EEG, then yes, we would have had to capture that in our recording. I have here the tip. The epilepsy is a disorder of the brain characterized by repeated seizures. So it's important that you understand what epilepsy is when you're looking at this in the ICD-10 diagnosis coding, okay? Diagnosis mapping. I actually put this on here. I will probably send these sheets out to each one of you because it's important that I want you to follow through, and I took the time to put all this information in here so that you could easily go back and look. Now, even though you may have gotten the codes correct on your coding, we still want to look at this and break it down for us. All right, so let's go back. And I'm going to go into the index, and I will broaden this up. I want to map it the way because there's and show you epilepsy here. And then let's see, epileptic. All right, so I want to look for generalized. Okay. Whoops, sorry. Here we go. All right, generalized. Idiopathic. All right, keep scrolling down. And the next diagnosis, the next adjective that I have here is, open this up. Oh, wait. I may have to broaden it up myself. All right, here's where I want to get. All right, so I'm going to broaden this out. Generalized idiopathic epilepsy and epileptic syndromes, intractable with status epilepticus. And I think Amara, not sure. Did you get this code, Amara?
Yes, I did. Though I didn't use the index, I used the tabla. I just took it. I just copied the generalized and it just brought it out. So I got
I
it.
know. You know, I do that, and then when I try to teach, and when I come in here and my mouse, we don't coordinate very well together, so it takes me a while to pull up everything. I didn't want to go to the tabular. I wanted to go to the index. So I wanted to make sure. I did not get your codes. That's why I asked you. I wasn't sure, and I want to make sure that you understand.
Yes, I did. I got but the only thing I went ahead to code the what was it again, with the refractory seizure disorder.
Yeah.
I got something for F45.5, which is conversion disorder with seizure and convulsions. Then I also coded the abnormal EEG, but
Okay.
the CPT, I got it right. I got 95819, then the correct ICD also got it right.
Okay, great. You coded this L44.5? Is that the
Yes, I
code?
coded the 44.5, the one
Okay.
that has the disorder with seizure and convulsion.
Okay, notice right here that under the G40 category, and that's where we're at, our code is G40.311. Notice here that we have an excludes one note,
Yes,
which
I'm
would have
just
told us,
yes.
yeah. So that's, make sure when you land at your code that you scroll down and read all the notes.
Okay.
That will help you. That will help you with that.
Yes.
And then once again, I'm going to preach this to you. Read this common language description. It's so important. And I know, Daniel, you did arrive at this code. Correct? If I remember correctly.
Come again?
All right. I made a note, and I want to look here because I think both of you assigned this abnormal EEG, this R94.01. Yeah. But that is why when I was reading the diagnosis to you, I wanted you to see that we have a definitive. Remember our symptom rule. Unless I come into the tabular at the code and it tells me to code also symptoms, and I don't have that at this code because I've scrolled all the way down. I have no instructions telling me to code also the symptoms. The abnormal EEG falls under the R, which is our symptom codes, correct? We don't want to assign a code that's not necessary when we can actually tell you, the reviewer, the payer, the insurance company, we don't have to say that the EEG was abnormal because we're telling them that when we assign the definitive code. And our code, generalized idiopathic epilepsy and epileptic syndromes intractable with status epilepticus, is our diagnosis. So if you have a definitive diagnosis, just like we did with the acute bronchitis, we had all those symptoms, but we don't have to list those. The coding rules tell us not to list symptoms unless the specific code has an instructional note to include, and this does not. Make sense?
Yes, sure.
Daniel, are you good with that?
I'm good. I did the same thing. In fact, I had coded exactly G40.311.
Yes.
And then when I looked up again, I saw abnormal EEG. So that was that confusion there.
That's okay. Does it make sense now?
Sure.
Okay. All right. And then our next, okay, that was our only diagnosis, was it not? Our next assignment comes in on the EEG. We have got to assign a code for the electroencephalogram. And if we read in the chart, we see that this recording was made with the patient both awake and asleep. Those are things that we would need to jot down or either just put them in our memory bank so that when we look up the procedure code, we will assign the specific description. All right. All right, so if I look at my EEG options here and I just extended monitoring, it would have to be documented to assign these codes. So keep in mind that when you're coding procedures, that the CPT codes allow you to be very descriptive. So any description that you have regarding a procedure could very easily play a part in your code assignment. Just like with this one, and it's right here. We have an electroencephalogram, EEG, with a recording awake and asleep. And if you keep reading, you will see that these other code descriptions are not applicable. They are not what was done with our patient. So we'll open this one up. It's pretty simple. It's an EEG recording awake and asleep, which is what we've got here. We do have an instructional note here. And then we have this common language description.
Yeah, I got
Your
that as
chapter
well.
guide, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I said I got that as well.
Good. And remember the modifier 53, I'm not sure. I had that assigned. I think Michael might have assigned that. We're not going to say that a procedure was discontinued. Modifier 53 actually gives a reduced payment. Now, if it's appropriate to put it, you definitely have to put it. But we want to make sure that the procedure was discontinued, which is what modifier 3 is referring to. And this procedure was just stopped. It indicates that it was stopped after the activity was accurately recorded onto the computer. And they stopped it before the patient went into another seizure. So there's no indication that there was a discontinuation. Questions? Okay. All right. I hope this helped.
Sure, sure.
If you think of questions later, if you're looking back at this and you're going, okay, I have a question that wasn't brought up in the discussion today. I want you to feel free to reach out to me. I believe each one of you have my email. So I want to make sure that you know that I'm available. And we want to move forward with this. And as Leon said earlier, get some jobs going on here. Got to take the final exam. We want to get ready for that. There is an E&M module that is going to be opened up into your virtual internship. I'm not sure if it could be done today, but hopefully the first of next week, because I want you to really work in there. I think that module will help you tremendously so that you can better understand E&M for the physician's office. It's strictly physician's office. It's not E&M in the emergency department. It's your E&M 2021 guidelines. So be looking for that. Maybe I can, if I know when it's posted, I'll send you all a heads up, because I think you want to focus in that. In the meantime, in your virtual internship, the only courses that I want you working on, well, let me say instead of listing that, let me give you the 2 that I don't want you in because they're being updated. Do not work in cardiology do not work in mixed specialty. Those are being updated. So I don't want you in there because I'm afraid it could create some confusion. Keep working in the other modules, but not those two.
Okay, question.
Okay.
Yeah, we have scenarios during exam period, you're not allowed to use Google for exam. You have an EM scenario you have to treat, and then there are some drugs we may not actually know if they are over the counter, or we can draw a difference if they are over the counter or prescription drug. How do we get that done?
Okay. In your exam, if it's a prescription drug, it's going to say that in the scenario.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
These scenarios they're geared so there is no ambiguous documentation.
In the exam?
Yes.
Okay.
The scenarios in the exam. And all the scenarios, I try to make it where it's very clear. And there may be confusion, but it would be confusion that you would have if you were at work. So, but the exams, and even in the scenarios, Daniel, if
So
it's a prescription,
so
it's going to tell you.
Exam scenarios are straightforward.
Yes. If they're not, I need to go back and work on that. I'm just kidding. No, they are. But listen, even today we saw where the physician wrote a prescription. Yeah. That has to be documented legally in a patient's chart. So you will always know if it's a prescription or over the counter just by the physician documentation. Now, if you have an adverse reaction and you need to know what kind of drug it is, then Google definitely play a part in that, because you may not know the specific type of drug, and the drug may not be listed in the drug table. Thank you all for today. And
Thank you
so much.